centuries before Columbus set foot in the New World. Long before European explorers documented their journeys, the Americas were already home to thriving civilizations. But who were the first people to set foot on this land? Their story isn't just buried in ancient ruins or lost oral traditions. It's hidden deep within their DNA. And the latest scientific discoveries are rewriting everything we thought we knew. For decades, history books have told us that the ancestors of Native Americans arrived via the Bering Land Bridge, a vast expanse of land that once connected Siberia to North America during the Ice Age. The idea is simple. As sea levels dropped, a frozen pathway emerged, allowing small groups of hunter-gatherers to follow herds of mammoths into the Americas. Then, as glaciers melted, the passage was buried underwater, leaving behind a new population in an unexplored land. This theory has been widely accepted for generations. But is it the full story? Recent discoveries suggest that humans may have arrived in the Americas much earlier than previously believed. Archaeologists have unearthed evidence of settlements that predate the Clovis culture, the civilization long considered to be the first Americans. Fossilized footprints in New Mexico, dated to at least 23,000 years ago, challenge the idea that the Clovis people were the first to inhabit the continent. This means that the journey to the Americas may have begun thousands of years earlier, possibly through unexpected routes. One of the biggest mysteries is whether the first Americans came solely by land, or if they used the sea. The coastal migration theory suggests that early settlers may have navigated the Pacific coastline using simple boats, following rich marine food sources. If this is true, entire civilizations may have existed along the shores of ancient America, only to be swallowed by rising sea levels, leaving behind little trace of their existence. But the real game-changer comes from genetics. DNA evidence shows that the ancestors of Native Americans descended from an ancient population that split from East Asians over 25,000 years ago, before mixing with an enigmatic group known as the ancient North Eurasians. This fusion of genes created a unique lineage, one that is found nowhere else on Earth. The Anzac, one discovery, a 12,500-year-old infant buried in Montana, provided undeniable proof. The child's DNA matched that of modern indigenous Americans, confirming a direct lineage between ancient and contemporary native peoples. Even more intriguing are the genetic traces of a mysterious population in the Amazon, known as Population Y. Some researchers believe this group may be linked to ancient people from Australasia, suggesting that migrations into the Americas may have been more complex than a single wave across Beringia. Could it be that the first Americans came from multiple directions, at different times, shaping the diverse indigenous cultures we know today? Every discovery brings us closer to answering one of history's greatest questions. But as we dig deeper, the story of the first Americans only grows more mysterious. The past is far from settled, and the truth may be more astonishing than we ever imagined. For thousands of years, the land we now call the Americas remained untouched by the outside world. But long before recorded history, an extraordinary journey was unfolding, one that would shape the genetic identity of entire civilizations. How did the first humans reach this vast and uncharted continent? The answer lies in the silent language of DNA, the bones buried beneath ancient landscapes, and the mysteries that science is only now beginning to unravel. For decades, researchers believed that all Native Americans descended from a single group that crossed the Bering Land Bridge. But groundbreaking genetic studies are proving that history is far more intricate than the simple migration story. The latest DNA evidence reveals multiple migration waves, distinct genetic markers, and even connections to unexpected ancient populations. These discoveries are not only changing what we know about the peopling of the Americas, but also challenging long-held theories about human movement across the globe. At the heart of this puzzle is the question of how early humans spread across the continent. Archaeological digs have uncovered artifacts and ancient remains that suggest a far more complex migration pattern. Traces of human DNA found in North and South America indicate that some groups traveled inland through ice-free corridors, while others may have followed coastlines, relying on maritime routes to navigate the Pacific. These findings align with indigenous oral histories that speak of ancestors arriving from different directions, each carrying unique traditions, languages, and genetic signatures. But what's even more fascinating is the diversity within the genetic data itself. Y chromosome haplogroups, passed down from father to son, show distinct patterns among Native American populations, revealing not just one, but multiple ancestral groups. Some lineages can be traced back to ancient Siberians, while others show affinities with Paleo-Siberian populations that once roamed across vast, frozen landscapes. The discovery of these genetic connections suggests that early Native American ancestors may have spent thousands of years isolated in Beringia before embarking on their journey into the New World. Even more astonishing is the revelation of genetic links between certain Amazonian tribes and populations from Southeast Asia and Australasia. These findings defy traditional migration models and raise an even bigger question. Could there have been an ancient population that reached the Americas from the Pacific, long before the Bering Land Bridge migration? If so, their traces remain hidden deep in the genetic code of indigenous peoples, waiting to be fully understood. Science is rewriting history in real time, and with each discovery, the story of the first Americans grows more intricate. As researchers analyze ancient DNA and piece together the movements of early humans, one thing is clear. The history of Native American origins is not a simple, linear path. It is a complex web of migration, adaptation, and survival that spans tens of thousands of years. And with every new breakthrough, we come one step closer to uncovering the full story of the first people who called this land home. Buried beneath layers of time, the genetic story of the first Americans is more complex than ever imagined. For centuries, historians relied on artifacts and oral traditions to trace the origins of indigenous peoples. But now, DNA is revealing a far deeper history, one that challenges everything we thought we knew. Who were the ancestors of Native Americans? What ancient lineages still echo in their genes today? And how did their journey shape the civilizations that flourished long before Europeans arrived? The answers lie within the genetic blueprint passed down through generations. DNA evidence has confirmed that Native Americans descend from a population that split from East Asians over 25,000 years ago. But their story didn't begin there. Before reaching the Americas, they mixed with a now extinct group called the ancient North Eurasians, a people whose DNA is also found in modern Europeans and Siberians. This genetic fusion created a new lineage, one found exclusively in indigenous peoples of the Americas. But what makes this even more intriguing is how this DNA evolved as Native American ancestors spread across the continent. Haplogroups, the genetic markers inherited through maternal and paternal lines, show distinct patterns among different tribes. While most Native Americans carry Y-DNA haplogroup Q, which traces back to their Siberian ancestors, another group, haplogroup C, appears in select populations, suggesting a separate migration wave. Meanwhile, mitochondrial DNA, passed from mother to child, reveals 5 main maternal lineages, labeled A, B, C, D, and X. The presence of haplogroup X in certain indigenous groups of North America has led to theories of ancient migrations that remain unsolved. And then there's the discovery that shocked researchers, an ancient genetic signal in some Amazonian tribes, linking them to populations from the Pacific region. This means that while most Native American ancestors arrived through Siberia, some groups may have had an entirely different journey, possibly navigating the Pacific thousands of years before recorded history. The implications of this finding are staggering. Could it mean that multiple waves of migration shaped the Americas, each leaving behind a distinct genetic fingerprint? With each breakthrough, new questions arise. How did these ancient populations survive the harsh Ice Age conditions? Did they intermingle with earlier, now extinct groups? And could there still be undiscovered branches of their family tree hidden in untested DNA samples? Genetics is not just telling us where the first Americans came from. It's uncovering how they adapted, evolved, and thrived in an untamed world. As scientists continue to decode the past, one thing is certain. The genetic origins of Native Americans hold more secrets than we ever imagined. And we are only beginning to understand the full story written in their DNA. Long before the rise of great civilizations, before towering pyramids and sprawling trade networks, the first people of the Americas carved out their place in an untamed world. But who were they? How did they survive in a land untouched by human footsteps? And what secrets do their ancient settlements hold? Archaeological evidence paints a vivid picture of early life in the Americas. The first great civilizations did not emerge overnight. They were built upon the foundations laid by nomadic hunter-gatherers who adapted to every challenge nature threw their way. These early groups, known as Paleo-Indians, roamed vast landscapes, hunting massive Ice Age creatures like mammoths and bison. But as the climate shifted and these giants disappeared, humans adapted, turning to fishing, foraging, and eventually the early forms of agriculture that would shape the societies to come. Over thousands of years, these small bands of people grew into complex communities. Some settled along rivers, developing sophisticated fishing techniques. Others built earthworks and burial mounds, their precise alignments suggesting an early understanding of astronomy. The evidence is clear. These were not primitive wanderers. They were engineers, builders, and innovators, creating cultures uniquely adapted to the environments they called home. One of the most astonishing discoveries is Cahokia, the largest pre-Columbian city north of Mexico. At its peak, it was larger than London at the time, with towering mounds, wide plazas, and a structured society that controlled vast trade networks. How did a civilization this advanced rise and then mysteriously disappear? The answer remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the ancient Americas. But Cahokia was just one of many. From the elaborate cliff dwellings of the ancestral Puebloans to the vast trading empires of the Mississippian cultures, each region developed its own distinct way of life. Some built elaborate road systems, connecting distant settlements, while others constructed temples and ceremonial centers that hint at complex religious beliefs. Even more intriguing is the evidence of early written symbols, suggesting that these societies may have had systems of record-keeping long before European contact. Could it be that an entire written language was lost to time? As we continue to uncover ancient settlements buried beneath the earth, the history of the first great civilizations of the Americas is being rewritten. These were not isolated tribes. They were connected by trade, by shared knowledge, and perhaps even by stories passed down through generations. The more we uncover, the clearer it becomes. The first Americans were far more advanced than history once told us, and their legacy still echoes in the landscapes they once called home. Deep within the genetic blueprint of Native Americans lies a story unlike any other, a tale of ancient connections that stretch across continents, linking the first inhabitants of the Americas to populations from lands they never saw. For centuries, scholars believed the origins of Native Americans were straightforward, but recent advances in DNA analysis are revealing a far more intricate past, one filled with unexpected genetic ties, lost migrations, and ancestral mysteries that defy conventional history. At the core of this puzzle are the genetic signals found in indigenous populations today. While most Native American DNA traces back to early Siberian ancestors, new research has uncovered something astonishing: fragments of genetic material that don't match the expected patterns. In some Amazonian tribes, for instance, scientists have found traces of a lineage resembling that of ancient Australasian populations, a discovery that challenges everything we thought we knew about migration into the Americas. Could there have been an unknown early population that arrived long before the main migration waves? Even more perplexing is the evidence of ancient North Eurasian DNA in Native American genomes. This genetic imprint links indigenous Americans to a population that once lived in Siberia thousands of years ago, a people whose DNA is also found in modern Europeans and certain Arctic groups. But how did these ancient Eurasians contribute to the genetic makeup of Native Americans? And what does this tell us about the prehistoric world that existed before humans ever set foot in the Americas? Beyond the genetic traces of ancient migrations, researchers have also uncovered distinct markers that separate different indigenous groups. The Nadine-speaking peoples, for example, have genetic traits that set them apart from other Native American populations, suggesting that their ancestors arrived in a later wave of migration, possibly thousands of years after the first settlers. Meanwhile, Inuit and other Arctic peoples carry unique adaptations that allowed them to thrive in extreme cold, hinting at a genetic divergence that took place long before recorded history. But perhaps the most compelling revelation is the discovery of genetic exchange between the Americas and distant regions. While most genetic flow into the Americas was one-directional, from Asia into the New World, Some studies suggest that there was also a reverse migration, with certain groups carrying Native American DNA back into Siberia. Could this mean that early Americans ventured back across the ice, returning to lands their ancestors once called home? Each new discovery reshapes our understanding of history. The genetic puzzle of Native American origins is still incomplete, but one thing is clear: their ancestors did not follow a single, simple migration path. Instead, their journey was one of adaptation, movement, and survival across vast landscapes and changing climates. The deeper we explore their DNA, the more we realize that the story of the first Americans is far older and far more interconnected than we ever imagined. Long before European explorers set sail, the Americas were home to civilizations whose histories remain shrouded in mystery. But how did these cultures emerge? What forces shaped their development? And what can their genetic legacy tell us about the untold past of indigenous peoples? The first inhabitants of the Americas were not just survivors, they were innovators. As they spread across vast and diverse landscapes, they developed unique ways of life, suited to the environments they encountered. Some adapted to the frozen tundras of the north, mastering the art of hunting in sub-zero temperatures. Others thrived in dense forests, where they learned to cultivate plants that would later become the foundation of agriculture. Each group carried distinct genetic traits, shaped by thousands of years of evolution, leaving behind a biological record of their journey. But the most intriguing part of this story isn't just how these early societies formed, it's how they transformed over time. As populations grew, cultures became more sophisticated. Tribes that once relied solely on hunting and gathering began forming complex settlements, engaging in trade, and developing distinct identities. The rise of large communities led to social structures that were passed down through generations, influencing the development of powerful civilizations. Yet, genetic research has revealed something even more astonishing: hidden markers in Native American DNA that suggest long periods of isolation followed by bursts of expansion. Scientists believe that at certain points in history, some indigenous groups remained in genetic bottlenecks, with limited outside contact, while others spread rapidly, carrying their traditions, languages, and technologies with them. This genetic evidence aligns with archaeological finds showing sudden bursts of cultural innovation, from advanced irrigation systems to monumental architecture. What's even more remarkable is the discovery that despite the vast distances separating different indigenous cultures, there were deep ancestral links between them. Genetic studies indicate that groups as far apart as the Arctic and the Andes share common ancestors, suggesting that long-distance migrations and trade networks were far more extensive than previously believed. How did these early societies maintain connections across such immense distances? And could there be even older, undiscovered civilizations that once bridged these ancient worlds? With every new scientific breakthrough, the story of Native American ancestry grows richer and more complex. The people who first set foot in the Americas were not just explorers. They were pioneers of culture, language, and survival, shaping the land in ways we are only beginning to understand. As genetic research continues to reveal new connections and hidden histories, one thing is clear: the indigenous peoples of the Americas carry within them a legacy that stretches back tens of thousands of years, one that is still being uncovered, piece by piece. For centuries, history has been written through the lens of conquerors, leaving vast gaps in our understanding of the past. But modern science is changing that. New discoveries are revealing a hidden timeline of indigenous civilizations, one that existed long before European contact. These breakthroughs are not just altering our understanding of history, they are proving that Native American ancestry is far more ancient, far more complex, and far more deeply rooted in the land than we ever imagined. One of the most groundbreaking revelations comes from the study of ancient remains. Skeletons dating back over 12,000 years have provided direct genetic links between early Native Americans and modern indigenous peoples. These findings dismantle outdated theories that once questioned whether today's Native American populations were truly connected to the first people of the Americas. The truth, written in their DNA, leaves no doubt. These are the direct descendants of the earliest settlers. But the genetic story doesn't just confirm continuity, it reveals diversity. As indigenous groups spread across the continent, their genetic markers evolved, influenced by geography, climate, and isolation. This explains why different regions saw the rise of distinct cultures, each with their own language, customs, and way of life. From the Arctic tundras to the Amazonian rainforests, Native American ancestors adapted in ways that left permanent imprints in their DNA. And yet, there are still mysteries that science is only beginning to unravel. Certain genetic markers found in isolated indigenous populations don't match those of other Native American groups, hinting at ancient interactions we have yet to fully understand. Did some early Americans come into contact with lost civilizations? Could there have been even older migrations that left only faint genetic traces behind? As researchers continue to analyze DNA, the genetic history of the Americas grows even more intricate. Every new discovery confirms what indigenous oral histories have said all along. Native American ancestors have been here since time immemorial. Their story is not one of recent migration, but of deep-rooted existence, a testament to resilience, survival, and an unbroken connection to the land. The science of genetics is still catching up to the full depth of indigenous history, but one thing is certain: the past is far richer than we ever imagined. And with every new breakthrough, the real history of the Americas comes one step closer to being fully revealed. The origins of Native Americans have long been a subject of debate, but with each passing year, new discoveries bring us closer to the truth. While early theories relied on artifacts and archaeological sites, modern science is unlocking a far deeper and more intricate history, one that stretches back tens of thousands of years. With advancements in DNA analysis, researchers are uncovering secrets hidden in ancient bones, tracing forgotten migrations, and revealing how indigenous ancestors shaped the lands they called home. One of the most fascinating breakthroughs comes from the study of ancient population movements. Instead of a single wave of migration, evidence now suggests that multiple groups arrived in the Americas at different times, carrying unique genetic lineages. Some settled in the vast plains, others in dense forests, while some made their way to the towering mountain ranges. Over time, these early settlers developed distinct cultures, languages, and traditions, each a reflection of their journey and the environments they adapted to. But what makes this story even more intriguing is the discovery of genetic links that defy conventional migration models. Certain indigenous groups in South America carry markers that hint at connections to populations from regions as distant as the Pacific Islands. Could it be that ancient mariners reached the Americas long before previously thought? And if so, how did they interact with the early civilizations that were already flourishing across the continent? Equally astonishing is the genetic evidence of isolation and reintegration. Some indigenous groups remained genetically distinct for thousands of years, while others intermingled, exchanging not just DNA, but ideas, technologies, and beliefs. This explains why certain cultural practices, from architectural styles to ceremonial traditions, bear striking similarities across regions that seem too far apart to be connected by land. The past is still unfolding, and as researchers continue to decode the genetic blueprint of Native Americans, more mysteries come to light. What lost histories remain buried beneath ancient settlements? How many civilizations have disappeared without a trace? And how many more secrets are waiting to be uncovered in the genetic code of indigenous peoples? The deeper we look, the more we realize that the history of Native Americans is not just a story of survival. It is a story of resilience, innovation, and an unbreakable link to the land. And with every discovery, we move one step closer to uncovering the full legacy of the first Americans.